Ian, welcome to the Emerging Excellence podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us and coming all the way from, I think it sounds like it might be sunny Scotland. Is that right?
Well, I'm actually, I'm very much Scottish, but I live in Germany. So
Right.
I'm in southwest Germany today. We've got an early spring day, which is beautiful.
Right.
But despite 35 years overseas, as you can tell, I'm still Scottish.
It is the affliction and the blessing of our
It is.
Anglo accents, isn't it? So,
It is.
you are a fascinating chap, and where I really want to start the conversation is really what you spend your time obsessing about, because I think in corporates, we talk a lot about performance, but we don't invest as much as what sporting teams do more broadly. Sporting teams take performance, success, where they're really hunting for marginal gains. They take it really seriously. They look for, um, the difference between winning and losing is extreme. Even coming second can feel like a loss, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, just for people who are listening to this, can you just give us a brief introduction to your backgrounds and how you currently focus your time at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And great to be here, Michael. So I'm a coach, and I guess I've been a coach for 35 years. And I think without uh, going too far down this rabbit hole, the coach hopefully takes someone from one place to a different place. Hopefully, normally a positive transition from one location to a new, improved location. So for a lot of my career, I was a golf coach. So that would be a kind of, someone teaching people to play the game of golf better. But certainly very early on in my career as a golf coach, going back 25 years, I became very much aware of the importance of that kind of person to person contact. You can say whatever you want, but if it's not honest, if there's not a lot of integrity involved, if there's not a lot of empathy involved, you really won't connect with your clients. That's something that I became aware of very quickly in growing a business as a golf coach. You have your hardware skills, but really it's the software skills, it's the person to person skills you have that will determine your success as a coach. If people want to go on a journey with you because they're going to pay for that journey and they really need to feel this journey is worthwhile with this coach. So I was a pretty, I say, a normal coach, that a lot of further education for 20 years. And I got to 43 years old and I realized there's tools missing in my toolbox. You kind of learn as you go along. I did my PGA training back in the late 80s in Scotland, did a lot of further education. So I got to about 2012, yes. And I saw this opportunity to go to university to really add to my toolbox regarding my coaching skills. Not so much teaching golf, but coaching people.
Right.
So these are the psychological skills and social skills and also physical skills in helping people get better, whether it's at golf or tennis or it's just sports coaching. So I did my 3-year master's then. That lit a fuse. Really, I guess I was always been a kind of bit of a hidden or closet academic. I enjoyed reading, enjoyed studying, enjoyed critical debate, arguing the rights and wrongs, which can annoy some people sometimes, but that's comes
We're
with
going to
the
get off very
package, I'm
well.
afraid.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
closet academic for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from then, that was good 3 years. I thought, well, I don't know enough. It's a one-time thing. So the year after, I started my PhD, and I wanted to focus then on. So for my masters, I looked at why top amateurs didn't make it to the professional game. Why they didn't transition from really successful amateurs to even making a living in the pro game. And that was interesting. And that lit the fuse for, okay, so I know why guys don't make it. It was 9 men. Why should a group of similar individuals then make the step up and have successful careers? And that was my 6 years of PhD. And that was a rabbit hole. Um, it was inductive studies. I didn't know what was coming. I didn't have a hypothesis, I believe. It was like, well, let's see what's out there. That took me on a really incredible journey, very humbling journey to have 16 men who I knew of, through the TV, through the newspaper, through social media, and for them to let me into their life privately, what they experienced. And I finished that last September. So that's the kind of study I've done. And what I do based on that, what I've been doing the last 10 years is very much working with athletes, and I work with a few managers as well, business managers, to understand what creates high performance and what prevents high performance, and supporting people going forward to reach their goals on their terms. And everyone's a bit different.
Yeah.
That's why you need a wide net and a really wide radar, an open mind, good listening skills. And all the work I do is guided by the clients themselves. They tell me where they're at, where they really want to go. And it's all about unpacking their past, for sure, to help them guide the future.
Let's start with what prevents our performance. I think that's an
Yeah.
area we often talk about striving for. So,
Yeah.
what did you take around that space? What were some of the key determining factors that you identified around preventing high performance?
Yeah. Well, if I can go back to, we all have, I guess, role models that guide us through life,
Yeah.
or, you think about maybe Steve Jobs has guided you, or a Warren Buffett, just someone that maybe don't know, but you think, wow, the way he speaks and talks and delivers, or Jim Collins, whatever. And one of those people for me, Michael, was an academic called Dr. George Engel, as in angel, George Engel. He was an American doctor. And he wrote a paper in 1977. And George Engel, when he wrote that paper, academic paper, he wrote it as a general practitioner, GP, right?
You.
And it was a fictional paper, but very interesting. He said, what happens when someone actually has a heart attack, right? And this was a scenario he played out in this paper. And it was a gentleman at work that had a heart that was started to feel the impact of a heart attack, tightening of the chest, his left shoulder blade, his chest, right? And he said and to cut to the chase, he said he experienced a heart attack, the individual in this fictitious paper. But what he did before he went to hospital, he called his family, he organized as much as possible in the office before he left. And his point there was, George Engel was, our performance is always based on three factors that collide and create the performance. There's a physical aspect. The man was having a heart attack. This is a physical fact. So let's say he was undergoing a serious illness, or, an attack on his physical health. But he just didn't rush to hospital. He thought, what's happening here? How can I organize my desk before I leave to go to hospital? So there's a psychological aspect. And he phoned some family and friends, which is a social aspect. So to get to your point through my lens, how I see the world, Mike, high performance is a collision of three worlds: physical, psychological, and social.
Yeah.
And for those that create the high performance, it's almost like a wheel. If you can imagine you've got a wheel and it's split apart. So the physical bit's outlying away from the psychological and the social bit. Let's say if I have just even a knee injury and I'm an athlete, if I have a knee injury and I'm a business manager and I can't basically, let's say, walk the stairs at work, that's a physical ailment that will annoy me because it restricts my capability, which is psychological. And I may be at home more with this sore knee than being at business meetings or being with my people. And that is the impact on the social aspect. So with all the people I work with, players, managers, parents, coaches, when I'm with them and the kind of Zoom calls we do in between sessions, I'm really asking myself, how is their biopsychosocial model? And to help them towards their highest performance, we're going to optimize all three parts of the puzzle. It's a three-piece jigsaw. It's never, very seldom running at 100%, but we're looking to optimize all three aspects to improve high performance. And that's basically with everyone. And for me to get there with my clients, I'll have my PowerPoint presentation, I'll talk them through it, I'll send them some slides, either at the start of a relationship or during. It really is saying, how are you feeling? What's going on? And it's really guided by their discussions and feedback to me. And it's an ongoing process because things change. I've got a young player support at college in the States, a very good golfer, NCAA Division One player. He's got a lower back injury. We're now in February. He's off the team for 2 or 3 weeks. You got to play your way into the team. It's highly competitive. This young man wants to turn professional in 2 years' time. So he's got a physical injury.
Mm,
It's also impacting a little bit on his psyche. He's on
mm,
the sidelines. He doesn't like it. His studies are good, but he wants to be part of the team because he's a team player. He's a buddy.
mm,
So he has this physical ailment, which is making him a little bit anxious not being in the team, and he's missing traveling to tournaments with his buddies. So you got a physical ailment which impacts on his psyche and his social world, and that restricts high performance.
So in the PhD that you did,
Yes.
when you were specifically looking at the difference between the 9 and the 1, let's say,
Yeah. Mhm.
are you saying that the difference between the 9 versus the 1 was that their biopsychosocial was not in balance or just
Yeah.
not quite right?
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. So if I go back to my master's degree, first of all, we looked at the top amateurs that didn't transfer, didn't transition to the pro game. The all nine, I'm just making a note here for me, all nine talked about um, losing the social support of the Golf Federation, right? So these players are split between Wales, England, Scotland, and Ireland, all four nations, right? Now, no one was at fault, but they'd been in this nest during amateur golf. And when they turned professional, they left the nest. Okay. And leaving that nest, they then realized, oh, I'm missing the social support I had previously because they were learning from the social support. Right. Now, of those nine, seven then, when they turned professional, found no mentor, social support to fill that gap that was created by the loss of federation support. Right. Okay. Now, what basically happened there, so with the big part of the cohort from the master's degree, they didn't have the tools. They were responsible for their fate. They didn't have the tools to adapt the social part of their puzzle. They didn't reach out and find new people to help them get ahead. They didn't reach out to find mentors. They didn't reach out because they were missing those tools, that agency to do that. It was their own fault. They just didn't know what to do. And there weren't people around them to advise them what to do,
Yeah.
right? If I compare my master's degree to my PhD, those that made it, that was the whole group, the 16, it was a successful cohort I looked at. They all had the personal tools to adapt their biopsychosocial model as required.
Right.
That meant some of the players got stronger. Some of the players would seek support from a psychologist. All of them would build the right social team to help them go forward.
Yeah.
So making it to cut to the chase, what my PhD shows in making it, the 16 made it by adapting to exceed the demands of the European tour. They did more than was required to make it, and that puts them ahead of everyone else. And they adapted, Michael, physically, psychologically, and socially.
Mm.
They optimized their jigsaw. Yeah, and I mean, I think if I go back to my, I said before, I worked with three kind of managers in recent years. I've been two business owners and one business manager. And I learned as much from them as they learned from me. These were experienced men with big companies. And certainly, if I think to all three cases, all three managers, when there was issues that we discussed, there's always finance involved, money, because they had thousands of staff to pay for. But generally, the challenges they faced were physical, psychological, or social.
Mm.
One gentleman had a bad skin condition that caused, that rashes outbreak was partly psychosomatic. It was the brain and the body working together. And they were always working on or thinking about the personality clashes in the company between the board directors, between staff, the power struggles, the backstabbing, just that whole psychosocial, what's the word? That the shark swimming, everyone kind of, a lot of people trying to take a bite out of each other. Yeah. So there you go. So that would be my summary. High performance, biopsychosocial, the optimizing those areas.
Interesting. And I think so. I'm listening this through a corporate lens, business,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
where and it's really. I'm kind of sat here. Kind of main question was like, well, surely it can't be so simple. Like that's my first and like initial response. Surely those three factors don't seem that, let's say, um, complex. And so I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah.
uh, and I guess at a theoretical level, they're not. Right? So if that's the case, why do you think, or what did you find in terms of why the nine, coming back to those,
Yeah.
weren't, you mentioned something along the lines of like, they didn't have the personal, I think the personal skills or the,
Yeah. Tools, I would say. Generally the tools. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
tell me about, though, what do you mean by that? What, when you say tools?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly it's very complex, because if we even break down psychology, I'm a social psychologist. I work with two psychologists who help me understand my world and understand what they do. Almost like a busman's holiday when I go and have sessions with them. It's tremendous. And and psychology is it's has more layers than an onion. You just keep going. So it's tremendous. Yeah, you know what I mean? So even psychology is very intense, it's very deep. And when you look at that, it's no wonder so few can make it to the very top of the corporate ladder, or so few make it to the very top of the sport tool, because it is so complex. It's easy to fall off the bike, easy to fall off the horse. It's tough to get back on.
Yeah,
You need good people around you. But I would say, because I've always had a big interest in business as well. I say a lot of the big business leaders in the past. I've read their biographies and watched the videos, and I always ask, before I became an academic, why did they get where they've got to?
yeah,
And they're all a bit different, but I think the challenge of making it is you need to be reflective enough, the individual, the agent, the manager, business owner, to look in the mirror and say, okay, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And how am I going to improve? And without the reflective piece, that becomes very tough. You can be alpha male in the boardroom. I don't know if you can say alpha female nowadays. You can be a big badass.
yeah,
You go a long way, but that whole thing of self realization, you know, being your best self, that's very complex. And I think without a lot of reflective skills, you're gonna come up short because you're dealing with people every day. You're gonna make tough decisions. You're gonna make important decisions, but you're always dealing with other people who you may need in the future, who may need you in the future. So it's that understanding the world around you as well, as well as your own needs. What are the needs of others?
Yeah.
And how is this going to grow? How can what is your ethos? What are your needs? What are the needs of your people, your staff, your business partners? What does trust mean? What does empathy mean? What's tough love? What's love? It just never stops. So it is tremendously complex. And it's no wonder people don't make it because to have enough skills to make it, it's a cognitive effort.
Yeah.
It's a cognitive effort to get this. Okay, where am I good at? What are my weaknesses? Who can help me get ahead? Can I can I can I repair some bridges I've burned in the past? How can I avoid burning bridges too badly? Because yeah, it's just an ongoing process of a world colliding all the time, isn't it? And that's the bio, the psycho, and the social within me and with those around me. Yeah.
Would you say, in terms of the work you're doing at the moment, so you're
Yeah.
as part, you've been so engaged by the Swiss
Hmm.
Golf
Golf
Association,
Federation. Yeah.
Golf Federation, sorry.
Yeah. It's
And
okay.
I'm intrigued that people at a senior level in golf, right? They've already. You talked about amateurs turning pro. They're still at that point, given the popularity of golf, they're still bloody good, right? They're going to be very
Yeah.
good golfers. And what we're talking about, and you're not even talking about people who get into pro and even win. You're just talking
Yeah.
about to the pro, and not
Yeah.
pro to best in the world.
Yeah.
But I think the amateur to pro is a very interesting space for corporate because I think there's a lot of people who never really go quote unquote pro in their careers. And from what you've shared, a lot of people underestimate what it really takes to actually be really good, right?
Yeah.
I had a great pleasure of getting to meet really good people in corporate, and they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And then you speak to everyone else, and yeah, they really stand out when you meet them. So coming to the reflective skills, the cognitive effort that you've talked about, like, what do you like? How do you start to go in the people who are already showing, let's say, from, and in a corporate lens, they might say high potentials, right?
Yeah.
How do you start to go about going, you've thought about this all wrong, or you have no idea really what it's going to take this step, even though, your par's low or whatever it might be in terms of the
Mhm.
language. How are you starting to bridge that gap to take them on that journey to help them understand what it really takes?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, the first session's always very exciting with any new client. I think for
Right.
any business, it's like, wow, this is a chance.
Yeah.
Um, I've opened the door. The door's been opened for me. Um, where do we go for there? So basically, with every first session I'll have with a client, it's sitting down. I've always got my big flip chart paper. I still have my pen and paper.
Okay.
I just and then I ask them, where are you at just now? Where do you want to go? And they're always right. You know, it's coming from them. It's just a very good tool from Stephen Rolnick. Bear with me. Motivational interviewing,
Right.
right? Very good scientific tool, motivational interviewing. And that ties in quite closely with the way I work with my clients in my PhD. A motivational interviewing assumes the client is always right, and they are. My clients are always right in my world because if I don't think they're right, I can't empathize with them. I can't stand in their shoes. That's number one. A
Mm.
good coach must be an empathizer. You've really got to stand in their shoes. And standing in their shoes allows me to see their world better and also tries to build a bridge to them that whatever they think and see is correct. So my starting point, I say in every session, where are you at? Just tell me about yourself. I may have them draw a mind map on a bit of paper for me in that moment, and I'll look at it. And then we'll discuss, where at the moment, where they want to go and how they think they need to get there. What do they think? Again, you say the strengths and weaknesses. How do they think they're going to get ahead? And generally, they start off um, with a big goal. They come with an idea. I want to turn pro. I want to be successful professional. That's great. And fairly quickly, we'll break that down into smaller chunks to, see progress quite quickly to motivate them. But it's very much coming from them. And it's whatever they say is correct for me in that moment. I'm dealing with people that have already achieved quite a lot.
Mhm.
I see it's the number one's the empathy, understanding their world, listening to the way they talk, listening to the experiences. And I've got to think they're right. Otherwise, I can't stand in their shoes.
Mm.
We take it from there. Now, as the relationship develops, and I'm going to say my position becomes stronger because I've gained trust with them, I will start to introduce some thoughts for them to think about. There's that Professor Lawrence Allison, very smart man at the University of Liverpool. Lawrence talks about as an interrogator. He talks about there's four masks the interrogator must wear. You've got the monkey, who's the social animal with the business partner. Okay, so that's like being a buddy, right? You've got the mouse, who's a listener. That's the empathetic part. You're going to be a lion at some times. You will lead. You will need to lead your business partner because they need your advice after trust has been gained. And the fourth he talks about is the T-Rex, when you may need to bite your business partner, metaphorically,
Yeah.
when, and that's going to be planned as well because things aren't going well. Something's not happening. And all those four faces I use as a coach, I use as a consultant with every client I work with. And I'm always thinking, okay, what position does this client need from me now?
Mhm.
Monkey, mouse, lion, and very seldom T-Rex. And you're moving between those positions with the client to help them move towards their goals. That takes a lot of skill. It takes
Mhm.
a lot of time. But the big one is being the listener, standing in their shoes, say, what do you want? How can I help you get there? And it's messy. It's not linear because the clients will feel different from day to day. Their motivation levels will change. Their focus will change. So it's always listening and then acting. Okay, what do we need to do? What do I need to do to help this person move forward? I had a situation recently with a client and a young athlete. Been working together for 3 months, and so I built up this picture of his biopsychosocial model with him. Just not using the fancy words, but it's just this kind of world around him. And I fairly understood what was happening, especially in his social world.
Mm.
The positives and negatives. And then out of left field came a discussion about I'm going to say a toxic grandparent
Wow.
who, I'm going to call it a self-made person, the parent of one of his parents, this athlete's parents, very dominant, had been very successful, very egotistical,
Mm.
and I became aware of the influence of this person on the young athlete. And
Mm.
I'm going, gee whiz, okay, that adds a piece to the puzzle I wasn't aware of. Something else to manage within that performance of this young athlete. And this was big. This was big. And I just had to take a deep breath. I said, right, And it's typical. I think I put it on Twitter. I said, once you think you know it all, you realize you're just starting.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you think, wow. And also the athlete hadn't, to that point, the athlete hadn't been that aware of it. But as it was discussed, it became clear to the athlete and me, this is a real stone in your shoe. And how are we going to deal with that?
Did you say storing issue or stirring issue?
A stone in the shoe. Like
Oh, under the shoe. Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a stone in the shoe. Excuse me. I think that's comes. I
Like
don't know where it
translation.
comes from.
Just translating.
Yeah, a thorn in your side in English, I
Yeah,
believe.
it's totally getting it.
I think the Italians say stone in the shoe. I think I picked that from my wife. Um, so it's that metaphor. So and again, you're going forward. It seems kind of obvious. You can't work at this depth with too many people because it's time intensive.
Yeah.
I don't. You can stand in front of a group of 100 executives and get far with this because it takes a lot of reflective practice. It takes some notes. It takes them to go and away and come back. That's certainly how I work and how I think people get better around me. How I help them.
Come back to the biological psychosis thing. I just want, just so we've
Yeah,
got real clarity around that. Can you just give us, because I think what's really powerful and about what you're sharing is a lot of like coaching as a leadership style these days has become very prevalent. It's,
mm, yeah,
certainly we're moving away from workplaces where kind of like very directive communication of like, do this, don't
yes,
like that. That's really not tolerated anymore, right?
yeah,
Coaching has become um, the way, arguably, or very popular. I'd say. I think what you're talking about though is a very interesting lens because I think about mentors that I've had. They would challenge me psychologically. They would
mhm,
encourage me to change who I was hanging out with, which is a
yeah,
social piece. And they
yeah,
would also, you know, challenge me around my food and exercise, on some level. And I'd never
yeah,
really together like that as you can't really move the dial if you just focus too much on psychological, um, or you just try, and maybe socially, I think a lot of companies just run programs, quote unquote, which might teach you social skills. As an example,
yeah,
and
yeah,
communicate. But if your biology and psychology is up the spout, then yeah, you're primed for failure. So let's just get really granular so we're clear. So when
yeah,
you say biology, are you talking about nutrition, exercise, those
yeah,
things, or something
yeah,
else?
yeah. Generally, if I wear my sporting my sports coach lens, if I was looking at fitness, you know, obviously nutrition, health, water intake, and also from the sporting point of view, how an athlete moves, so how a runner runs, how a golfer swings the club, how a cricketer swings the bat.
Mm.
The biological side is very much the techniques they use and the state of the body to optimize those techniques. Now, if we transfer that to the business world, you look at the research. I think there's over 30 years now of research which supports when an individual becomes fitter, they feel better about themselves. So if I get biologically fitter, I feel mentally better about myself. If I think it's irrefutable. So straight away there is that tie up. Look at the research that the fitter I become, the better I feel about myself. I hope we've all been through it. I'm back on the intermittent fasting now. I've been on that since November, loving the process. Off the sugary drinks, low carbs, skipping dinner. I've done it previously. I kind of fell off the wagon for a year when I finished my PhD. I cut out the sport because it really was getting this done. So that's a big one as well. And anyone that I'm working with it, we get to that honest discussion. How do you feel about yourself?
Mm.
And if they say, "Oh, I feel a bit slovenly," and said, well, let's get started with something. And again, start small, start simple. Let's start something you can do. Walk around the block one time, you know, have one less beer. Just make it simple start to that process. So biology, yes, is fitness, physical fitness, um, conditioning, all the kind of stuff that allows it, that powers our physical motor to drive. And I say in that whole thing, I see people, you see it in social media, and you see someone interesting, sometimes on WhatsApp, you follow people and you'll see they take the photographs down. That's a message. When someone's had a photograph in WhatsApp and takes it down, that's for me, there's a psychosocial message there. Something's happened.
Sorry, what you're saying when they post a photo in WhatsApp and
Yeah,
then is that what you're saying? Or when
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. And people will know, I'll send a message saying, are you okay? And then maybe get an answer back, yeah, not feeling too good about myself, something's happened. There's messages you'll see when someone goes off social media altogether. There's a reason for that, which I get completely or different reasons. Um, and I'm following a young athlete. There's a young athlete I know at the moment, and I'm following their postings on Instagram, and I can see the positive physical direction this athlete's going in because they're posting more photographs of themselves, and they're in a fitness program which I know about. So it's again that biopsychosocial thing. You know, I think most of us will buy new clothes when we're feeling better about ourselves, that we feel worthy of fitting into those clothes.
Mhm.
But biocycle, I don't go and buy new clothes when I'm up towards 100 kilograms. I think there's nothing can make me look that good. Talking about myself,
Yeah, yeah.
and now I'm down to 90. So there's always that mixture going on. And then if we're talking about the corporate world, I say with most people I know, there's not really a big differential between corporate and private worlds nowadays.
Mm,
The worlds linking. I
yeah.
think that's okay. That's the world we live in. But looking to optimize both to help the other one. So that the safer my private life is, the better I feel at work. The better I feel at work, the better I feel at home. There's that kind of symbiosis. And that's, people are telling me it doesn't, if it's tour golfers or managers I've worked with in the past, it's no one switches off completely from work. I think that's okay as long as we've got that balance of, there's a positive symbiosis going on there between my working life and my private life. It's a challenge. It's an absolute challenge. There's nothing easy about it. Um, there's nothing easy about high performance. But I see the starting point, I think, for most people's reflection, where am I honestly? And how do I get ahead? And to get ahead, I think almost everyone needs support. If that's reading a book, a podcast, having a mentor, journaling, almost everyone needs someone or something to give them some reflective tools.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was having lunch with the head of Australian, sorry, one of the team of the Australian sailing team, and his
Yeah.
job is to help Australia become preeminent sailing nation when it comes to the Olympic competitions. And we were talking about success as a sailor, and he was saying that
Hmm.
the sailing environment, unlike golf as an example, there's so many variables. So water can be different, the currents can be different, the winds in different
Yeah.
directions. Then it depends who's in the field. It depends on where the people in the field, where they are on in the court, all these crazy things. And he said in such a volatile environment, which is so prone to innate complexity, he said the number one thing when it comes to choosing an athlete or what one and that like successful athlete is their ability to think. And I said, well, how do you select? What's the precursor for selecting athletes? Back in his job is to make sure that Australia wins in LA 2028, Brisbane
Mhm.
2030. So we're talking about people who are probably in their like mid to late teens currently. So what's the precursor to find that? His one word response struck me. It's like, it's curiosity. We look for
Mhm.
curiosity in our people. And I
Yeah.
think that speaks nicely to your flexion piece, Ian, because the ability to reflect or the ability to be, or reflection's more kind of, do you think that's, is that self-guided reflection? Is that what you're tapping into?
I think if we go to curiosity, I like that as well. I think curiosity could be replaced with a couple of words, which would be yeah, questioning, curiosity, definitely that, yeah. With reflection, I mean, that can be taught. Reflection really is that honesty in, who am I? Where am I? What are my
Yeah.
strengths and weaknesses? What am I good at and what am I not so good at? One of the, excuse me, that can be taught. But certainly I would say with the players, excuse me,
All right,
the
take
player,
one.
oh, get a little bit of coffee
Yeah.
here. Excuse me. But certainly the 16, the players on my PhD, they were obviously all driven as well. So they had curiosity because they were driven to get somewhere. A lot of that came from the past, all that came from the parents, in that the parents had given them good life lessons. Typically, it would be, like things like hard work brings its own rewards. You only get out what you put in.
Mm.
If you want more than anyone else, do more than everyone else. Things like that. Be your best. Um, but with the reflection, I think the reflection was driven by curiosity, questioning, and saying, okay, I want to get somewhere. How am I going to get there? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the way there? One of the players said very explicitly, and again, a word of story would be honesty as well, said, look, I'm not the most talented player. And he recognized early, I need good people around me to help me get where I want to go.
Yeah.
And that guided his philosophy of payment. He said, I was also happy to pay more than the going rate because I wanted to guarantee the best people around me that they're with me and not with the competition.
Mhm.
So to kind of go back there, say curiosity, great, driven, I would say was part of the process as well, but driven with some really good early learning experiences. Not all were positive, but some really strong early learning experiences of how it takes. And again, one of the players again became very successful. He felt he was, what's the word, slighted quite a few times in amateur. He was overlooked. He felt there was some dogma there against him as an individual. And I think there was 3 occasions he felt as an amateur he was ignored when his golf should have put him in national teams and international teams. And he said, and again, his reaction that was, I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove you're wrong.
Mm. So you would call
You
that
know,
a positive early learning experience?
yeah, it turned the negative into a positive.
Yeah.
And again, the he didn't enjoy being overlooked for international teams, but he decided himself, I'm going to make you regret that. Another of the players who was a big lad, he said himself he was very much overweight. He he would almost look for people to insult him, his size, and use that as a driver to show them what he could do. To again turn a negative into a positive.
Mm.
And he would listen to TV commentary, and if someone would say, "Oh, here's big Johnny Smith," that wasn't his name, he'd take that, and that would annoy him. He liked that. He liked to be annoyed. He'd say, "I'm going to show you tomorrow what big Johnny Smith can do." So again, psychosocial tools, and Johnny Smith talked a lot about the influence of his dad when he was a young man. The kind of stories he learned from his dad. The kind of just be strong. You go forward. Self belief,
Mm.
psychosocial kind of worlds coming together there. So
one of the things which stuck out to me, so I heard about you through the Dan Abrams podcast, the sports site show,
Yeah.
which is quickly becoming my favorite podcast that I've ever come across, actually. And undiscovered,
Dan's good, isn't he? Dan's a
right?
great interviewer.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the people we, yeah, the topics, and I think I reckon if my talent had been channeled correctly, you know, professional sport just wasn't on my radar. But I
Hmm.
think of interest I really could have taken it much further than I did. But that's an aside. The um the point I wanted to ask is you're talking about, obviously, you can prime your bio, your psycho, your social factors for success. You've also started to see or talked about on Dan's show around mental health, around poor mental health, about ill mental health, especially around high performance sport. So can you
Yeah.
just share a little bit about, but I would imagine it would be along those three fundamentals. Is that the kind of starting point again?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So to frame this, I think for your listeners, it would be important. So out of these 16 players had successful careers on the European tour, but they're also world tour players, the very best. They played in the States on the PGA tour. Um, and I kind of split the career into five parts. It was a bit like uh, similar to uh, an actor, I guess, or a stage, a theatrical player. So we had the early stage, which are called the emerging artists. That was the first couple of years on tour. The second stage was then moving up stage. They were moving towards the limelight. They were gaining skills. They were adapting biopsycho and socially without knowing it. That's what they were doing, or without putting a title on it. That's what they were doing. Then had their years in the limelight. They were the stars, the big tournaments, Ryder Cups, major wins, big money. Then towards the end of their career, they moved into this cameo role. So they're maybe still on the tour, but were no longer the headliners. You know, their star was falling. Let's say their allure they were no longer the headliners. And then the fifth stage are called Afterlife, which I took directly from that. I don't know if you've seen the Ricky Gervais show on Netflix. That was him surviving the death of his wife. And without making it too melodramatic,
Mm.
some of the players talked about surviving death because losing the career was a death for them because that was who they were. That
Identity.
was their identity. Absolutely. So with these sixteen players in the early stages of the career, only one player um, experienced depression during the glory years, during the limelight. And that was because over a prolonged period of time, he didn't feel he was getting the respect from the press, the media that he deserved, right? This is a stand up man. This is a proper tough bloke. And that kind of hit him after 2 or 3 years of feeling that the press were really mean to him, just mean, personal mean. And we talk about depression and anxiety. These men would then find their way to a GP or a psychotherapist and they'd be diagnosed. So it's how they felt, but would also be clinically supported afterwards. That was just the one case. But the real big hit that was, absolute shock to me because, I watched golf, I've been a keen golfer for 40 years, and you just see the guys on TV and you see the, the dream lifestyle you believe. And then when they started talking about the cameo years, this is when it hit home that loss of identity. And it really happens when they started to play poorer. They were no longer as competitive. You think Cristiano Ronaldo is a soccer player, he's still a great player, but he's moving towards 40. He's moved to Saudi Arabia for this final big gig. But he's certainly no longer the young star he was many years ago. So if you're not quite as good as Cristiano Ronaldo, you really are feeling your values shrinking.
Yeah, right.
So basically, what happened? These players lost a bit of form. They could no longer compete against the young guns. They'd been out there for maybe 10, 15 years. Um, and with that losing form, obviously their finances shrunk. They were no longer winning the cash to pay for the big house and the number of cars they had parked outside and the private schools for their kids. So it really impacted on their self worth, and losing the finance also created some stress at home with their better half, their life partner, because they had certain expectations as well, how they should live, because that's how
Mm.
they lived in the past. And all of a sudden, their friends would dry up as well. They're no longer that important. And then they realized, oh, it wasn't about me, it was about the job I was doing.
Yeah.
And you roll that into one Michael over a period of 3 to 10 years, as one of the players said, he'd defy anyone not to be depressed.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm
if you
just,
look at the literature,
yeah.
yeah,
Go on.
if you
Go
look
on.
at the literature on when a business goes bust,
Yeah.
what that does to the owner.
Yeah.
See, especially that, it can be massively impactful because there's financial loss. You feel you've let other people down. There's a psychological impact of losing your value. And those cameo years, I say 7 of the 16 had real dark periods where they lost their value. They felt they were of no value to anyone anymore. Um, and only really towards the end of their career would they look for psychological support because it wasn't talked about. It was kind of taboo. And remarkably, even this we're talking about, let's go 5 years ago when this was happening, they thought they're the only one experiencing this. Now, these are world traveled men, had been, let's say, millionaires, have traveled the world, had been in company with titans of business and TV and industry, and they thought they were on their own in this. That's one of the players called this downward vortex. At the time, the European tour had no psychological support net in place. That's happening now. Thanks to Dr. Andrew Murray's doing a great job. But it's brutal. And then when you hear the stories, you think, wow, this is tough. Now, to take them to the afterlife, 4 still struggle now. And they've been away from the tour for up to 10 years and struggling with talking about medication, antidepressants, and regular psychotherapy treatment. Yeah.
So there's lots in there. What do you think is the main lesson in there?
Yeah. I think there's two. I think there's two. One of my ethos is high performance with mental well-being. You don't need to be an SOB to be a top business person. You don't. You don't. And there's a price to pay if you're mean on the way up, which we know about. So my two things there would be high performance with mental well-being, which means if you are anyone on an upward journey, let's say any young manager, any manager, there should be some training, some mental support on the way up because they're going to need it on the way down. They will need it on the way down. And I'm going to say, if you look at the research I'm aware of, it seems to be particularly prevalent among men. Women seem to be, if you look at the research, have a better handle on this. But maybe because a lot of men, this is their whole being, their whole existence, their whole values being the, this, in their eyes, this achievement model. And when that's gone, it's a brutal way down. So I would say mental training on the way up and then support on the way down.
Mm.
And I think it's fairly prevalent now, or it's it doesn't matter if you're looking at cricketers or rugby players or soccer players or now golfers. We become aware of when these athletes lose that identity, it's a crippling blow because it's something they've been working towards as a golfer maybe for 35 years and then it's gone. And there's and they need something to fill that, which is the training. So on the way up, we've got mental training. And as soon as they kind of start to hit the cameo roles, they're thinking, okay, what's the way ahead here? What's going to be a second career for you? And and they'll need support for that because it's like, you know, they've been indoctrinated, they've indoctrinated themselves so long. I am a manager. I am a golfer. Very difficult to see beyond that because that's been your whole life. That's
Yes.
been your whole target for many, many years.
So,
But it's doable. Yes.
so identity, I'm just, because you perfectly summed up my experience as a business owner in my first business. I just drove it into the floor. It fell apart. I lost control. We ended up losing money. It was awful. Getting horrible phone calls, etc. It was a very, very stressful experience. And yeah, people disappeared and
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk to anyone. Um, my fitness got bad, like all of it,
Yeah.
um,
I get it.
and also really challenging to come back from. Like, I remember there was the term, like people would say, "Oh, you'll bounce back." And I don't know, my experience of bouncing back was more like a medicine ball when it hits the floor. Like it kind of bounces, but it more like slumps and turns into like a blob. And I was certainly a blob for a while. So in terms of identity, where does identity sit in that biopsychosocial piece? Because I think that's something in a corporate context, people kind of struggle with it. Like, do they become fixated on, I am a manager, I am a engineer. You hear engineers in the work we do, like they really fixate on that as a term. Like they do an engineering degree in it and it stays with them for the rest of their life. Like it becomes who they are, which I always think is quite interesting. I did a geography degree. I don't describe myself as a geographer.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. I mean, yeah. And this is the oh, I say to my young athletes that I work with. Let's say I've worked predominantly with golfers. I say you're fine young people that play golf. You're not fine young golfers. You are fine young people that play golf. Okay. So so again, if we talk about the mental training on the way up, which you're going to need on the way down, would be who are you? Now, the first thing that comes into my mind, I'm a dad. I'm a loving dad, right? Number one. Now, I became a dad late, which was lucky for me in my plan. Lucky I found a wife who would take me late on, right? Um, right, which is I was 43, which is great. To that point, I had been a coach. I was pretty career driven, even to this day. But it was just me and wanting to become this famous coach, let's say, on my terms. And then luckily, I got to a point and realized what for a number of years I wanted to have kids, but I had to have the right partner, and that was easier said than done. Someone who I thought I could grow old with it might grow up with me. So, but to go back to your point, without doubt, part of that mental training is we are individuals doing a job. It may be a job that we love. I love what I'm doing. I've always enjoyed what I'm doing, but it doesn't define me. It can't. It can't. And I say, number one, hope I'm a loving dad. Number two, I hope I'm a good husband. Number three, I hope I'm a giver of those that I work with and I care about. And number four, I take care of myself. And that's it. So I can still do my best. I do my best every day for my clients, but number one's my kids. Um, and again, I would say to go back to what we're talking about, I think on the way up, managers, golfers, whoever it is, soccer players, they should have that support of This ride's going to come to an end fairly soon, right? It might be 1 year, it might be 15 years. Let's say you're going to live to 80. You have a 15-year career as a soccer player, a professional career. It's not much of your life. So who else are you in that area? One of my role models, mentors, Professor Dave Collins in England. He's a tremendous psychologist, sports psychologist, leader. And I said to him many years ago, I said, what's the one tip you would give to improve performance? And Dave said, improve the quality of your free time. Improve the quality of your free time. He said, that will always improve performance. And improving the quality of free time means whatever you do in your free time, you feel better afterwards than you did beforehand.
Mm.
So it almost can be something different. It could be going for a jog. Maybe it's that podcast. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's taking the dog for a walk. But just make sure that quality of free time charges your batteries. And that's a good tip. But just going back briefly to your thing you touched on before, I think it's important if I can jump in there about advice that you'll bounce back. I think again that to support you, that lacks enough empathy for me to be valuable to you or to someone that's getting that advice, because it's I don't think experience tells me it's not what you need in that moment. I think the better advice I've had from other people, professionals, would be, okay, this is crap. Where are we? And how do you want to move forward given time? I think that's way more impactful advice. It's like you see when the mums and dads after a soccer game say, oh, it's just a game of football, or, chin up. It doesn't really do any good at that moment. So I think that's from the empathetic point of view, is standing in the shoes of your vis-a-vis. I think it's important when things go wrong to say, yeah, this is crap. This has been a shit time. Where are we at? And given time, how would you like to move forward? And given time's the key to have that space. I know another athlete just come back from the States, NCAA, didn't work out at college across there. The athletes moved back to Europe, and that athlete's now just taking some time out to think, okay, what's the way ahead? Bounce back, not at the moment, I'll bounce back, but just give me time to think, okay, where am I?
Mm.
Get my bearings again.
Mm.
And that may take a couple of months, that may take longer, but I think the brain and the body needs that after taking some big hits.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a better solution, a more successful solution.
I think the tricky thing about that period was specifically just I didn't know who to turn to, right? And that kind of speaks to what you said, or those men feeling alone, right?
Yeah.
You don't know where to turn. Sometimes your friends, you're like, oh, do I really want to, go there with my friend or something like that? So I think, and I guess this is what I love about this, about high performance, about what sport are doing, about because sport, you know, I think Alistair Brownlee in his book, Relentless, I don't know if you've read that book, but he talks about sport is, I think he quotes it from somebody else, but sport is life in fast forward. And I think it's a beautiful analogy that if you have a 15-year soccer career, you're going to have the ups and the downs. And I would say all that's just very comparable to someone's illustrious career where, you might become a CEO of, let's say, 40s, 50s, something like that. But then there's a forking race, that it maybe stretched over 5, 10 years, but you experience the same kind of, I'm not the big wig anymore. And so, yeah, I think it's beautiful what you're sharing in. I'm mindful of time. What would be, to round out this conversation in, how would you for people kind of curious about this biopsychosocial, forgive me, one of a bed, kind of
Models, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I get it all the time. That thing
Um,
you talk about, physical, mental, family. What was that called? Yeah, I get it. All good.
and model's an easy one.
Yeah.
If they're curious, where, like, how should they approach that kind of next step in terms of whether they, um, is it just they start to become more reflective, or how do they kind of take that walk down that road, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I've done in the past, let's say with family and friends that have approached me about this, um, again, bit of flip chart paper, right?
Mm.
What's it going to be? An A3, I guess, at least. And then you put your initials in the middle. So it'd be, I guess, you MF and a circle around it. And just ask them to go round that, almost create a mind map of their life in three sections. So top left, I would have fitness, top left fitness, physical fitness, right? And just all the things, all the pluses and minuses in the moment on the fitness. The fitness could go down to your teeth, your physical fitness, your diet, your danger of diabetes, all that kind of stuff. So top left would be fitness, plus and minus. Okay. Top right, psychological. How do I feel about myself? Now, there will be a bunch of things, if someone takes long enough, a bunch of things which could come up there. Someone might be, could be typically, they'll say, well, I'm quite nervous when I'm around my boss.
Mm.
That could come back. Or I feel inferior when I'm playing tennis at the club on a Sunday, right? Another one could be, I feel quite impatient with my kids nowadays. There's no rights or wrongs. And some people might do this with a family member, or they might want to do it on their own because it's already you're getting to the bones. This is quite tough, right? And bottom right, I put down the social side. How are things with my mates? I think myself, I've got 4 good buddies in the village I haven't seen like since Christmas time. I'm thinking, I need to reach out and have a beer with the boys again. I've been working my fitness, I've been away quite a bit. I think, oh God, these are my mates. If you ignore them long enough, you kind of lose them, and that's not good. So again, the social side would be your friends and people around you. Social could also be you've got let's say a group of friends you've met, and within that group, you notice some turbulence. Maybe someone's got into drugs. Maybe you think someone's drinking more than they have in the past. Maybe you see a friendly couple and you notice a bit of stress between the husband and wife. And these are all just observations. And once you've done that, the 3 pieces of the chart, you've got your bio, your psycho, and your social, just look at it. And what I generally say to my clients, you got your 2 highlighter pens, and maybe take green was normal for go. So go through the one green that you really enjoy, and one orange, which would be a barrier, something that's, stopping your high performance at the moment. And that orange one you choose is one you can fix. It's taking that stone out of your shoe, taking the thorn out of your side,
Yeah.
right? And again, you start small and simple. It could be like, for me, I'm gonna call my buddy Jurgen to go out for a beer this Friday. Now, having just spoken to you about it, it's in my mind, and I kind of feel guilty, actually, because I haven't seen Jurgen since Christmas. He's a good lad. He's a good mate of mine.
Yeah.
So things like that. So you put it down, you're in the middle, your 3 worlds around you, plus and minus, highlight one plus you're really pleased with, and one I'm going to call barrier that you think I could improve this.
And is
I
that
could
in each area, Ian, or do you literally just one across the 3?
I would if you get one in each area, that'd be great. That would be one in each area, because I'm going to call my friend Jurgen. I'm going to think about the way I talk with my kids.
Yeah.
And so that would be psycho and social. That would do for me because I'm working on my fitness. I've got a dental appointment next week. So that would do me. Whatever we choose to do must be doable. If I think, I'm going to fix all these things next week. No, that won't happen. That's no good. That won't motivate you. Start simple, start small. And then the cogs start turning, all the stuff about, atomic habits, whatever. You start something small and it develops, it grows. So pick the low-hanging fruit to improve. You think, I did that. That's better. What else is on my list? What else can I do now? But don't go for too much at one time. And And really what you're doing there, it gets good another bit of science. You're looking at the barriers and you're finding solutions to those barriers. And we choose the smallest barriers to start with because they're easy to fix or easier to fix. And it starts getting the wheel turning for more change. But start slowly, start simply. Low hanging fruit's important. Pick off that first. Don't go
Mhm.
for the tough stuff.
Very cool. Very cool indeed. Super
And
simple.
with yeah, and with that, put it on. I've got them in my office. I've got my bunch of my players charts on the walls here behind me. Put them somewhere you can see it. You're going to put it in the fridge, in your office, beside your laptop. Just somewhere that you're kind of confronted with it most days. Think, oh, how am I doing here? Okay, did I call Jurgen? No, I'm going to call him now. I'm going to call him later. Come on, let's get this done.
Yeah.
And we know how good we feel. We've ticked off those little jobs that have kind of been the stone in the shoe for a while. Yeah, and I've been thinking about Jurgen for ages, actually, on and off. Now I've mentioned it, now I'm going to call him. You and I are going to have a beer soon.
You've all got a Jurgen, haven't
We
you?
do. We do,
Yeah.
thank goodness.
Yeah.
If we don't have a Jurgen, life's kind of poorer for it.
Yeah. And we've all got that thing we've been meaning to get to. So, um, Ian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your
Pleasure.
profound
Pleasure.
the simplicity you bring to this topic. I think Alex Hormozy talks about, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, kind of
Nope.
business, very prevalent. He's all over social media and he talks about the reason, the kind of the great hallmark of an expert is simplicity. And I think uh, what you've been able to distill is exactly that. So yeah, huge props, Ian. Thank you so much. We're going to link to your coaching business in the show notes.
Thank
Um,
you.
I've certainly, I've learned heaps around high performance and specifically like the foundations for it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to overlook a lot of that basic stuff. And it's fascinating to hear. I think what makes a high performing athlete is the same as a high performing human, whether in
Yeah.
corporate, whatever. It really doesn't matter what kind of domain of expertise you're trying to achieve. It's the same. So yeah, Ian, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, if I could have one thing there just to finish off, which I think would be important, great. My final shot would be, no one makes it on their own. And our own drive will help us certainly go forward. And it's a lonely journey on your own. Get other people in the boat and share the journey with others, and I think one thing that's my career, my studies have shown me is that reaching out to people, there's lots of people that want to help.
Mhm.
There are, I mean, they maybe don't appear that way
Mhm.
and they're busy, but there are enough people that can help others get ahead and are happy to help. And again, that's part of our needs to help others. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So I think if the listeners take one thing, the model's great, the biopsychosocial model, but also reach out for help. Let people say no, give them a chance to say yes.
Mm. I love that. Let people say that. And testament to exactly reaching out to you. You said yes. And there's many
Pleasure.
who
Yeah.
say, so thank you.
What's the people who help me? That's the bottom
Yeah.
line. What
Yeah.
I think, wow, I've got to pass this on. I can't keep this for myself.
Love that. Yeah. Well, that's
All
generous.
right.
Generosity. Thank you so much. It's
You got
been
it.
a
You
pleasure.
got it.